All right, so today we are going to cover a Remington 1100 that the customer was pretty honest about, and I appreciate that, but yeah, let me show you. All right, so the Remington 1100 is one of the most popular shotguns I work on here in the state of Mississippi. Just everybody and their brother has one, and they're good guns as long as you take proper care of it, right? But this gentleman sat here and told me, he goes, look, I've had this since I was a kid. It was my first shotgun. My dad gave it to me. He goes, I never learned how to clean it. No one ever showed me. My dad took care of it until my dad passed away, and then I had a cousin of mine that did it, but they passed away, and so it hasn't been cleaned in several years. And I believe that. Let me zoom in. Right? So I just pulled this bolt out, right? Okay? Now he's complaining that it wasn't firing, right? Which is not really that much of a surprise. I'll pull this firing pin and see if the firing pin is broken, because that does happen quite a few times, especially with dry firing. But I'm just going to try. Well, it doesn't look broken, does it? All right. Well, let's sit here and look at this trigger assembly. Yeah. My hands were clean before I started working on this firearm. Right? I always try to wash my hands in between each firearm. Right? But all of this is going to get taken apart and scrubbed and cleaned and so on and so forth. Now, this is just the action, right? The action bar. But you can still see large bits of buildup in here. Right? And then when it goes back to the actual carrier, I mean, look at all that. Look at that. Right? I mean, just piece after piece here just seems to get worse and worse. And I'm just reaching over here and grabbing, right? Right? I mean, these are your friction rings here. Right? So these are nasty. Now, this is the outside of the magazine cap, and you can see there's quite a bit of crud on there. Flip it over, there's quite a bit of crud on there. Right? The shell latch isn't horrible. I'll restake this in, right? And then, of course, the lock washer and the stock bolt. This is supposed to be nice and silver and shiny, right? And then this is the action spring tube, which brings me to what I'm pretty sure he did for a long time. Pretty much sit here and say, he pretty much sat here and said, hey, the gun's not working, so let me spray it down with some type of oil, right? This is the rear end of your action tube. There should not be this much grime and grease, right, on this. Okay? And then we sit here and we look again. You know, this is the lockup surface for the bolt, right? And all of this, I mean, and it's sticky. That's the biggest thing, right? And then once again, let's sit here and look inside the receiver here, right? Which, let me try to get some better light. Hold on. Let's see, does that do it? Does that do anything? No. How about this one? If you're going to get into gunsmithing, just go ahead and get used to buying a bunch of lamps and lights and that kind of thing. But you can see in here the buildup, especially right here on the back, right? I'm going to try to angle it. It's just so built up. My goodness. Now, this is not the worst one I have ever seen in my life, but it's up there. So what I'm going to do is actually two things. One, I'm actually going to sonic clean all of this. I'm going to finish tearing down like the trigger assembly and everything, right? And I'm going to drop it all into the sonic cleaner, right? So let me show you my sonic cleaner because it's warming up right now. Now this is my sonic cleaner. I really enjoy these. I ordered this one off of Brownells. The one thing I don't like about them is the temperature gauge over here is just in Celsius. Now, granted, once I figured out what temperature I liked, I just always put it to that one and let it heat up, okay? And I use this thing a lot, right? So you kind of see how nasty that water is there, right? Now, according to that company, because it actually comes with some of their cleaning solution, it's called Sonic Tonic, which to me sounds like a bad, 1980s high-class mixed drink. Whatever. But they're saying you can get 100 guns out of it. But they're saying you can get about 100 guns out of each tank, which is a gallon and a half worth of water and solution. So yeah, I've been really putting that to the test, but I think after we do this one, it's going to be time to change the water, because this is really dirty. And I'm going to do this in 2 separate batches. So the trigger group, the bolt, all the little pieces are going to go in one, and then I'm going to try to put the receiver in there, and I'm going to try to put the barrel in there as well with the receiver. So yeah, that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to take the magazine tube off, and yeah. All right, so instead of running the receiver and everything through as well, I thought about it and I went, this might be, a good time to show people how I clean without the sonic cleaner. So yeah, let me spin it around and see what y'all think of the parts that I have sonic cleaned, and then I'll show you how I actually clean firearms without the sonic cleaner. Now, full disclosure on this bolt, I have not taken it apart. I wanted to sonic clean it because even this plunger for the extractor was not moving very freely, and it would have been more of a pain for me to take it apart to sonic clean it before actually doing it. So I will take this apart now, because you can still just make out there's some grime that is being loosened up because of all the sonic cleaning, right? I mean, ew, that looks nasty. And I'm going to sit here and polish this up a little bit as well, so on and so forth. But everything else looks nice and bright and shiny, right? Here's this, right? The little connector, link, whatever you want to call it. People call it different things. I'll just polish that up a little bit. And then here's the actual carrier, right? This has still got the water displacing fluid on it, so I'll be getting that off here soon. But you can see we don't have that buildup anymore, right? We don't have any of that buildup, so that's really good. Oh, and I forgot I wanted to show the spring as well. So look at that. That's back to that nice aluminum color, and the spring cleaned up nicely. Now I'm still going to go in here with a Q-tip and just kind of clean out the rest of it. It's broken a lot of the stuff loose, so yeah. Now, some things that I'll use is hops number 9, which I go ahead and just convert it over to a glass jar, mainly because it has a wide mouth, and I just use an old toothbrush, right, to really scrub it all in, okay? Then you're also going to sit here and want just an old rag. This towel I think I bought from, like, I don't know, Goodwill or Army or Salvation Army, whatever, right? I just cut it up to make it a good size. So then what I also use is a lot of Q-tips, okay? This is not even going to be enough. And something else I use is a spray bottle with acetone in it. Yes, I know this is blue. Acetone's not normally blue. That's another story for another day. You know what, I'll just explain the story. So we also do a lot of Cerakoting here. And in the beginning, I was using acetone as my degreaser before actually getting ready to, spray the Cerakote. And in the instruction manual, it tells you that, hey, if you get a run, just take it and re-dunk it into the acetone. So that's what I did. And then it completely contaminated all of the acetone to where Cerakote said it couldn't be used. So I just took all of it and put it back into gallon jugs and use it for cleaning. Now, before a lot of people sit here and start screaming, I just use damn brake cleaner, I understand. Right? I personally am not a fan of brake cleaner, okay? I just don't like it, and I don't like the cost of it. So for 1 gallon of acetone, I pay like $20, $22 after taxes, right? And then I just get a simple sprayer, right? And this is what I use. Whereas with, brake clean, you're paying a couple dollars a can, and are probably going to use a can for every gun that you use it on. So to me, it's a little bit cheaper, which saves my customers a little bit of money. It's a lot less hassle for me. So yeah, this is just easier for me. So let's get back to actually cleaning. All right, so ignore the cheap paint shaker. I use it for Cerakote as well. But since we have all this gunk and grime, and even up here is sticky, what I do first is I just come along and spray some acetone, right? And then I come back with my old rag and just start wiping this off. Now, one thing you want to take in consideration when using brake clean, with using acetone, with whatever, is you will get what's known as flash rusting, okay? Let me open that up just a little bit more. There we go. All right? And you also want to be somewhere that's well ventilated, okay? Because these fumes are highly, highly toxic. But you see, if I sit here and left this here for just a little bit, let me get it to where a lot of that bluing's gone. You can kind of see right in here where it's starting to rust almost instantaneously. That's going to happen. You just have to be mindful of it. So then once I get an area wiped down, I usually dump my toothbrush into the hops and then really start getting down. The acetone is going to break down the big globs of carbon, of oil, of everything else, okay? This hops number 9, which you can use CLP, I've used Ballistol, I've used pretty much all of them. Hops is just still my go-to, so that's my opinion, okay? But this hops is really going to start breaking down anything that's left, any residue that's left, right? Now, some people are going to ask, am I going to sit here and remove this shell latch? I may, but I don't know yet, okay? And removing this can be kind of a pain because you see it's got a split washer in there, or clamp, or whatever you want to call it, right? So you actually got to get a pair of pliers in there, spread that apart, get the ring off, and then the shell latch will come out, and I can clean behind it. But let me see what I've got just going in this, just as so. So I'm going to get in here, right? A couple of squirts of acetone, and then really get in here with a towel and my finger. So I'm going to pick a spot. I'll be able to talk one of these days. I swear it's not the chemicals in the air. But I picked a spot that's relatively clean, just so you can kind of see. I'm just working on that back part of that receiver, right? Look how nasty that is. So now I'm going to move to a different spot on my rag, and I'm going after the big chunks. That's all I'm doing here, okay? Is going after these big, ginormous gobs, okay? And get into those rails a little bit, right? Easy peasy, right? And get a little bit of hops, because you can already see the difference. It's in, especially in the rear of that receiver, right? So I'm going to sit here and just scrub this down. Now, one thing to be mindful of when working with hops, and I think, well, I'm not going to say that because I'm not 100% sure, is hops, once it's left on any blued surface for an extended period of time, or what's extended period of time, there's not really a document that sits here and goes, 20 minutes, right? An hour, 5 hours, nothing, okay? It's just extended period of time that it will remove the bluing. Now, I'm not so much worried about it on this firearm, because I'm going to get a cotton swab. This right here is not bluing. That is rust, okay? Now, before some of you come at me and go, oh, that's not rust, that's patina. You actually need to look up what patina is, right? Patina is some type of rust that the firearms and antiques community has declared is a good type of rust. And I sit here and call hogwash on that, okay? Because this here is still the bluing, right? This is rust, okay? So I'm going to sit here and scrub this down really, really well, okay? I'll worry about the action tube here in a little bit. Now, once I've got all that done, since I've worked on the mag tube first, I'm just going to sit here and wipe. And see, a little bit more of that grime came off, right? And it didn't with... Okay, so we got all that. Now I can kind of sit here and try to find another decently clean spot. And I'm just going to wipe off the outside really well, okay? Because I'm going to come back with a copper brush and try to get some of this rust off, okay? And then I'm going to get back into here. Now that the hops has had a little bit of time to work, right? And some of you that are very insightful will sit here and notice that I've still got the magazine spring in here. That's for a reason, okay? And basically I didn't want to take it out yet because I usually take the magazine plug and spring and cap and all that fun stuff out when I go to actually clean the inside of this magazine tube, and I always clean from this side to that side. So with it in, it helps keep any grime that's in here from me scrubbing from getting in there. And then once I actually get to where I'm cleaning out the tube, I push everything from this side out the front, okay? That's just me. I'm weird like that. Leave me alone, okay? But now that we've got a bunch of that done, I'm going to come in here with just Q-tips. And I'm trying to keep my hands out of the way, but you can look and see, right? Look at that. Look, just look at that, okay? So that's garbage. Then I'm just going to do the other side here. And that's garbage. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to clean this receiver. I'm not going to film all of it because this would make it like a 2-hour video with me explaining everything and working around the camera and that kind of thing. Just understand, I'm going through and all the little crooks and crevices with Q-tips, and then I'm going to scrub everything down again with some hops and then clean everything off again with rags and Q-tips until I get to the level of clean that I want, okay? Once I'm done with that, I'll bring y'all back in for actually cleaning out the magazine tube. All right, so here we've got it cleaned up, right? You can sit here and see that 99% of that gunk and grime and everything else is off. And here's just some big chunks of it that I just pulled out. Now, when I say that I'm pulling out, I mean I'm using these dental picks, right? So these are aluminum and you can bend them fairly easily, as you can see, right? And I love using these. I don't recommend using steel ones because when you rub steel on steel, it can take off finish and gouge things and so on and so forth. Aluminum can as well, but it's less likely to. So as long as you're not sitting here and putting a god-awful amount of pressure on it, you should be fine. Now, they also make brass ones, by which I have some of those. They work really good, but I just prefer the aluminum ones overall. And then I sat here and talked about copper brushes, right? You want to get a copper bristle brush, right? And I've already gone after some of this already, okay? But you can see how it's turning brown. Well, that brown is not from the copper itself. That brown is from the rust that is underneath this, right? Oop, I did not mean to hit the camera. I'm so sorry, right? I mean, you just sit here and see, right? Another little clean spot right here. And I'm just wiping, okay? Yeah, right? So I've gone ahead and pulled out the magazine spring And you see this is pretty nasty. The magazine spring cap, right? You see it's just covered in oil. I didn't put any oil on that. And then the mag follower. Now, granted, I could take all of this and just drop it straight into the sonic cleaner like I did with everything else, and we'd be good and golden. But honestly, these things are a lot faster if you're just talking about these three items, just going after it good with a rag, right? And see, that already looks a lot better. Now I'm going to sit here and put just a little bit of hops on there, trying to keep everything in camera, right? Just smear that around, okay? Just try to get all over it. Try to get some on the inside of it as well, because there is dirt and grime on the inside of these. A lot of people miss that step. And then just do this. And then get a Q-tip to get really close. So not much dirt left there. Then get inside here. And there we go. And the inside, look, yeah, the inside never gets dirty, right? And I basically do the same thing with this. Right? Now I can come back with a Q-tip and really get into that corner. Just one good time. And yeah, it was a little dirty, right? Now the spring, what I do is just take, basically I'm wrapping my fingers up in a towel. I'm putting my thumb inside and my finger outside just like this, and I'm gonna rotate this, okay? Dang, I'm gonna drop a rag. All right? And I'm just gonna sit here and twist this. Now these springs do get dirty, but in the grand scheme of things, I mean, you can sit here and see it's just falling off. In the grand scheme of things, these do not get excessively dirty. So like with any firearm, I recommend that if you're going to have this firearm and you're going to use it on a fairly regular basis, like this customer states that he uses it for hunting squirrels, hunting rabbits, and also hunting turkey. Okay, and see, we just got more that's just flaking off there, and you see that giant buildup there. If I'm getting out of camera, I do apologize, people. I'm trying to work around this camera the best that I can so that I can still see, because I can't work through a screen. I can't, okay? So I'm trying to work around it, and sometimes it just works, sometimes it doesn't. Now, we're here at the end, right? My thumb is pretty clamped in. So then what I do is just take it off and do it this way, okay? And there we go. That spring is now clean up to there. Now I got to go back because I didn't start all the way at the end. I never start all the way at the end. I try to start at about 3/4 of the way and then work up and then back the opposite direction. But you just see all that nastiness coming off. I mean, this thing was gross, all right? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a paper towel and shove it through the magazine tube. So stand by for me, okay? Now, if you have a long cleaning rod, by which you should, but I know some people don't, right? Then use it to actually shove this through, okay? And I got to step off camera just to pack this in. I can't do it around a camera. I thought I could do it around a camera, but I thought wrong, right? So I got it inserted in. And then if you don't have a cleaning rod, just use like an aluminum rod like what I've got here. And I'm going to line it up and shove it out. All right. Now that's not that dirty, okay? But I'm going to grab another one, step around the camera, and shove another one in. Now understand, this is without any hops on it, anything else, right? I just want to show you how nasty this is just to begin with, okay? And this one's not too terrible. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to get a patch, soak it in some hops, run it through here until it comes out nice and clean and white. All right, so now that we've got all that done, I'm going to go over some oils that I use, right? I use Ballistol. I love this stuff. And for about the past year or so, I've really been working on this Lucas gun oil, and I'm really liking this stuff, okay? But I don't use this everywhere on the firearm. I use it where there's going to be a lot of friction and a lot of movement. So once again, I just have another toothbrush. This one is strictly used for Ballistol, right? And I just dunk it in, tap it out, and I will sit here and just put some on here, right? And I'm also one of these weird people that I absolutely love the smell of Ballistol, and I love the smell of hops. I don't know why. I'm weird. Leave me alone. I enjoy it. But then once I put some on, I just wipe it off. And I'm not wiping over and over and over again. I'm just getting the excess off, okay? And I'm going to do the same thing here inside the receiver. All right, the brush is getting a little dry. I need to refill this canister as well, because that's something else I'm going to recommend to everyone. Don't have these giant cans of cleaner or lubricants or whatever on your table, because that is going to take up just a lot of room and a lot of space, okay? So I bought this little bitty can. It is, what is this, an 8 ounce? 4 ounce, right? And used it, and now I buy the 16 ounce cans, and I just refill them. Yeah, you're playing with stickers? Sorry, as always, everyone, my daughter is in the shop with me. She loves having some daddy-daughter time, right? And I don't mind spending time with her and teaching her the art of gunsmithing. I don't. And before people sit here and start screaming, oh my God, she's exposed to all these chemicals and this, that, and the other. No, she's not. She is not allowed on this bench while I'm working, okay? And yeah, so let me grab another paper towel because that one's about spent. And just once again, I'm going to sit here and just wipe it off. Now you see some more grime came off, right? Now that is probably from the amount of rust that's on this, okay? So I have come to the conclusion that nowhere on this gun is going to be sparkly clean ever again, right? So there we go. Now you see we got a nice little sheen on it, and that tells me that we've got oil all in the crevices, so it's going to help prevent it from rusting again. Now, I'm going to sit here and start assembling this firearm, get it all back together, and probably test fire it today. Well, no, I can't, because I've got to do some stock work. I'm going to do a video on that stock work as well, okay? Because that's kind of an interesting thing. But before I stop this video, this Lucas oil has a little applicator needle, and I was telling you that I mostly use it on areas that have a lot of friction. So it's going to be this rail here, which is not going to show up very well. right? And there's another rail on the other side. And what happens is the bolt carrier is held on with this. The spring is on the back of this, which goes into the stock, right? Those rails, this is where this sits, right? And so the shotgun will force it to go back. The spring makes it go back forward, or actually I should do it this way. So we go bang, it comes back, it moves forward on those rails I just pointed out, okay? And then on the trigger assembly, every part that really moves and pivots, I usually apply just a drop or so on it. And when I mean a drop, I mean this much. Let me zoom in a little bit. All right? That much. And then I'll just sit here and take the applicator and just kind of move it around, right? Now, yes, it's probably still putting out some, but that's okay. Because then I usually, once again, come back and just very lightly take some of this out. Just to where it's not too much oil, right? Because there's a fine line in between the right amount and too much oil. All right, so as you see, we are done with the gun, right? So we can sit here and, you know, it all functions, it works. A couple things that I want to point out, and let me take this off. Yeah, I should have done this before I started hitting record, but as always, the brain doesn't always work, right? Is you have this ring here. It's a rubber O-ring. Now, people are always getting confused by these, okay? So I'm going to pull off this rubber O-ring, and I'm going to pull off the other two rings, okay? There's two rings. Now, granted, these are a little burnt, but they still got some life left in them. The customer doesn't want to replace them. But people ask me all the time, how do I put these on here? Okay, it's really simple. Let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. You see, this is a flat surface, right? And on one ring, we've got a flat surface and a beveled surface. So we want the flat to flat. Then with the second one, you kind of got a beveled surface, and you have, I call it the stepped surface, right? Because it looks like a little step there. Bevel goes to bevel, right? Then your gas ring, right? This one is starting to get stiff, but it's still got some life left in it. Once again, the customer didn't want to replace it, so we're not going to. We're just going to bring it down, and I always put it down a little bit further than that notch, okay? Now, holding the bolt back with my hand, I'm going to sit in here and slide the barrel on. Come on. Trying to do all this while working around the camera. Sorry, guys. All right, come on. There we go. Then close that up. And then what I do is I can sit here and go ahead and put on this forend, right? This foreend's perfectly fine, right? There's nothing wrong with this forend. Yes, there is. Let me put this cap on, and I'm going to show you. Now, why am I putting this cap on? Honestly, so you don't lose it, okay? Now, we're going to move the shotgun out of the way, right? This forearm, she's been loved, right? The checkering, the pressed checkering is about gone, right? But the biggest concern is this here. That crack, right? You can just see it open up there. So we are going to have to fix that, okay? Now there is some oil and some carbon buildup in this that I'm going to have to address, but that really and truly is setting it up at an angle, much like so. Lightly spraying some acetone on the inside, and try not to hit the outside because it will take this finish off, and the customer once again does not want to refinish the stock no matter how many times I asked him and told him that it needs it. Now we're going to sit here and look at the buttstock. Look, we've got another crack right here. It goes all the way down, but good thing is it's just superficial, so you can just see it. Let me grab a pointer here. Where am I at? There we go. You can just see it right there, right? But it does not move into the rest of this, so that's not too bad. But when we come over to the bottom, we see we've got a small crack right here. we've got a larger crack right here. So let's follow that larger crack. It comes up. Come on, refocus. There we go. And it cuts in all the way down to here. And of course, this stock is still dirty. So we're going to work on that first. Now, as you can see, this is really dark. And you're like, oh, well, it's supposed to be. No, it's not. It's not even supposed to be this dark, right? This is just from oil and dirt and everything impregnating itself in. And I can show that. Let me go grab another stock. All right, so I thought I had another stock sitting over here, but I don't. So anyways, but a lot of this is just oil and dirt buildup. So we're going to try to work on that, okay? What I'm going to need is, of course, some paper towels or a clean rag. I like using paper towels. They're cheap and they just work, okay? So what I'm going to do is, this stock doesn't really have any finish left up here. It's just oil and dirt and gunk. But you still got some of the original finish back here, even though it's splotchy and is begging to be refinished. So, yeah. And what we're going to do is I'm going to try to keep this in camera. And we are going to just... Now, you see some ran down the side. That's fine, right? We're just going to wipe it off. Okay? And then I'm going to sit here and wipe that off. Right? And we're going to repeat this process over and over and over and over and over again until we get a lot of this oil out of this stock. And then we can start working on these cracks. All right, so we got a bunch of the grime out of this, right? Which I even sat here and tested the wood integrity underneath it by using just a little dental pick, right? And applying a slight amount of pressure multiple times, because if the wood was really rotten, when I scratched it, it would have actually pulled out chunks, right? It wouldn't have let me scratch like it did there. So we got that done, and I went ahead with the forend and got a lot of that oil and grime and such out. Like, it's hard to angle it where you can see it in the camera. Anyways. Now, normally on a crack like this, I would actually spread it open, but you see, it's not spreading that much, right? Which is a good thing, okay? Because that means that I got to the stock quick enough, right? Now, I'm just cleaning off a little area. What I use is Brownell's AccuGlass. I love the stuff. I use it for all of my stock work. Been using it for several years. I'm not a paid spokesperson for AccuGlass. I just like it. So, yeah, I'm not a paid by anybody, right? But it's a 2-part epoxy, and we're just going to sit here and mix this up, right? But I'm not going to make y'all watch me mix this. All right, now that we got a nice creamy looking substance, then we're going to sit here and put black dye in. Now, Zach, why aren't you putting in red or brown or anything like that? Because if you actually look at the wood grains here, right, those lines are the grains, and they're black, right? So I am going to make this look like a large grain, just like that is, right? So that's what I'm going to work on. So what I do is I just have, of course, these are just bamboo skewers that I cut up. Why? Because they're really cheap. And they're bigger and thicker than toothpicks. I get people asking me from time to time, why don't I just use toothpicks? Because they're so damn thin. But you see, I'm just kind of eyeballing it here, right? I'm just letting it drip, 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 right? I'm going to set that over here. This stuff, you look at it hard, and it just stains your hands. There's nothing I can do to get around that. I've cleaned the outside of the jar multiple times. I've cleaned the lid. I've cleaned everything. And, yeah. Alright, so that's not quite as dark as I'd want it. So I'm going to get some more. Sorry my arm's in the way. I know my father was not a glass maker, right? He actually worked in a print shop, printing magazines on a factory line. so I know my colors real well. Alright, I'm going to mix that up a little bit more. Now, once you start mixing this stuff, if you order some of this at home, understand you have 20 minutes, okay? 20 minutes from the time you start to mix this until it is no longer malleable enough to mix with. You can't really even move it. Now, what I'm going to demonstrate on here is the forend, because this is going to be the easiest part rather than the stock, because I got two places. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try just to hold with my finger and pry that open as much as I can. Once again, working around this camera, I'm going to get a very large goop. Get back in camera frame there, Zach. All right. A big, giant goop. Now, do I need this much? God, no. Okay. Most of this is going to get thrown away. Well, why are you putting it on there? So that I can do this. Because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit here and push right along the edge of that crack. And what that's going to do is force more of this epoxy into that crack, right? I'm going to wipe a lot of it off, and I'm going to come into the inside and do the same thing. I know you can't see it because this tree was not, you know, a glass maker either, right? And I'm just going to keep pushing it in there, keep pushing, right? There we go. Now I'm going to sit here and grab me a paper towel, try to get this, as much of this off my hand as possible. Another good tip for you, for anybody who uses this stuff at home, acetone will take this stuff off, not very well, but it will. But what I find is best is white vinegar. So I'm just going to sit here and wipe some of this off. Oh my God, you just did all that work. Why are you wiping it off? Trust me. Right? So I got a lot of that off. And now I'm going to squeeze this together. Watch. We're getting just a little bit of squeeze out. You can see it right up here. Right? We got that squeeze out, so that's good. That's telling me that now this crack is fully filled, right? I'm going to sit here and clean up the inside, where I wipe some on the inside while also maintaining pressure, closing up this gap. Now that we have the ooze out, we do not need to let it go, okay? Because once we let it go, then it's going to create air pockets inside when we squeeze it down again, and air pockets aren't very good. Now, got all that kind of cleaned up. It's not perfect, whatever, right? And I can't contort. There we go. Now, you can use surgical tubing to tie this down, and that's perfectly fine. That's what actually Brownells recommends. But what I use is an old inner tube, right? An old bicycle inner tube that I have covered in a little bit of Gold Bond, just body powder, right? Now what will happen is if this AccuGlass, which this one will, is going to ooze out and get on to this rubber, okay? Rubber doesn't hold up to AccuGlass very well, okay? Let me tie this off while I keep talking. But basically what you can do, if it gets on the rubber, you can just stretch the rubber a little bit and the stuff will kind of break off. Now the reason I use body powder like Gold Bond, you can use regular baby powder, whatever, is it will help with that as well. So now I've got this thing wrapped up, all right? Now why am I doing that rather than just use a clamp, put it around here and do that? Stretching this stuff, it wants to go back straight. So if I wrap it around something, it's constricting all the way around 360 degrees. A clamp is just going to be one point right here. It's not going to get anything down here. It's just going to get right here. Where wrapping it all the way around gets me 360 degrees of pressure all the way through. Well, shouldn't I put something on the inside of this to keep it from caving in on itself? If it was a more severe crack, yes, but as little as it is on that one, I'm not that worried about it. So I'm going to stop the video and start working on the buttstock. All right, so it's the next day. I forgot to mention that this epoxy takes 12 plus or minus hours, depending on your weather, humidity, you know, that kind of thing, right? But this is why I love this stuff. So I've got a big hammer, right? And all this stuff is set, right? I mean, this is one of the sticks, right? And you're like, oh, that broke off really easily, but it was just held on by that little bit, right? So now, big hammer. Big hammer. Big hammer. Right? Now we've loosened some of this up here. There we go, it came out. Right? But you see, hey baby, that's as much as it was connected, right? Alright, so let's just go ahead and look at what we've got underneath here. So I take all this off. Alright? And that crack is now sealed, right? Now granted, I've still got places like this and some up here, right? That needs to be gotten off. But let me look. Yeah. Like right here's got a little bit of it. And we sit here and we stretch. We see it breaking up. And then it just flakes right off of the rubber. That's why I love this stuff. I've tried surgical tubing in the past, right? And the problem that I got to is if it was a large gob of it, then it would actually, when you stretched it out, you would be more willing to rip the surgical tubing than anything, right? But that right there is going to be easy to come off. So we've got a sheetrock knife, right? We're going to be trying to work around again. Now we are not digging into the wood on this. We are lightly scraping this off, right? Well, if it comes off that easily, yeah, because this stuff's really thin here, right? If you get a thin layer of super glue, it is going to come off easier than a thick ball of super glue on something, right? So that's the way to think of it. And you see I'm just working small areas, right? Real small areas. Now remember, there's not a lot of the original finish left up here, right? I mean, there's just not. There's some up here, but here towards where the, locks into the receiver, there's not a lot of finish left, right? So now I'm going to come back with just a soft brush. Once again, I'm not applying a lot of pressure here, right? I'm not bearing down to where it's bending the bristles. I'm just lightly going over this, right? And then coming back, right? So I'm going to do this several more times to get, pieces like that off, the rest of that off, and all of this off. All right, another item that I'll use, especially on like buttstocks and when there's not a lot of, rounded surfaces, is something like this, right? And I picked this up at my hardware shop, and it's just a cabinet scraper is what it's called. But I'm going to sit here and try to line it up to where if you look at it, it's got an edge to it that is rolled over. So let me see if I can make it sound. Right? Where this side, right? And then this side doesn't have anything. But anyway, since it has this little bit of a lip, what I can do is sit here and just lightly scrape away at stuff. And you see that's gotten a lot lighter, okay? So I'm not going to use it on this, but that is another option. All right, so you see I've got most of it off, right? So on and so forth, okay? Now, if I was refinishing all of this, right, I would actually get all of this off and really blend it really well. But the problem is if I'm scraping all this off, then this will look really nice and refinished, and the rest of this will look bad. So I'm trying to make it all look the same, okay? So I've gotten a lot of it done. Now what I'm going to do is just to protect it, this is some stuff that I make up. It's called Gunny's paste, right? And I'm just going to rub it on here and let it set for a little while. Anywhere where there is no protected film left, whether, like in this case, it's the polyurethane or whatever they use to coat this, right? I'm going to sit here and smear some of this on there. Now, some of you are going to ask, what is in this? Honestly, I don't tell folks, right? I just tell them. So you can just go online and look up gunny paste, right? And you'll find 500 different formulas for this. This is a formula that I've came up with several years ago, and I love it, okay? So now we're going to leave that sitting for just a little while, okay? And then we're going to come back to it. All right, so we've let it sit here for a little while. I had a customer come in and had to deal with them, so it's probably been 20-30 minutes, and I just went ahead and just buffed it off with a rag, right? But you can see now everything's starting to blend in a little bit better, right? Now granted, you still got this one here. That's about it, right? If you weren't looking at this and knew where we were focusing at, I don't think you'd be able to tell, right? So let's put it back on the shotgun and test fire. All right, so we've got her set up here, right? Everything's nice and tight. Everything's good. So we're going to sit here and test fire, right? So these are just some Winchester Super X white box, low brass, 12 gauge, right? And I'm going to shoot it left-handed, just so y'all can see a little bit better. All right, safety's off. And she works flawlessly.